Hey, this is Chris at Art Secret Studio, and I've stopped the class so we can talk about a few things. The class is really not just about learning to do each exercise, but it's learning to buy into a thought process that one day will come together. There's so many variables in art. There's so many things on how to do something. But we've learned that there are some fantastic artists around the country who have certain thoughts and they're incredible, and yet other artists have different thoughts, and how do we merge all these? And the one common denominator is your thought process. So I thought I'd just interrupt for just a second and do a little landscape. It's a portrait, isn't it? Actually, it doesn't really matter. So you see, my thought process never changes. That's the part I want you to grasp, is the thought process. One of the things that has to happen is, in the beginning of the class, the pair exercise, the box, it's really the root of something that I'm hoping you continue running through your head all day long. Changing the value, is that important, everything you do? No, because sometimes painting's about shape or even contrast. You don't change temperature and you don't change value. But that's a deliberate thought. But 99% of the other time, you have to have this thought process in your head. It's a black and white drawing concept that you apply to everything you paint. Everything changes value from light to dark, either from the sun or farther from your eye. So farther from my eye is a lot of directions, or farther from the sun, okay? Eventually you have to change temperature. And what you don't realize when I paint is, so this is the lemon exercise. So it goes from yellow to orangey red, eventually alizarin. And I think the whole class knows that when you change value, you have to grab a color that matches that value. So if this is yellow on the left side and then it goes to 3 or 4, it becomes orange. And orange, like cadmium orange by Gamblin or Winsor Newton's orange, is a little darker and it's cooler. And then there's cad scarlet, and then there's cad red, and then alizarin and violet. And each color goes in a spot. Well, that's not the only thing that happens. The way I paint changes also. So if I'm changing temperature, yellow, orange, red, I'm also changing my thought process on how I paint. Quite often I juxtapose my color. So yellow as a color goes to green and orange. Sometimes in the yellow flower you'll see, or a yellow lemon, you'll see orange and you'll see green. It'll either be all orange or it'll be all green, or sometimes both. It doesn't matter. The more I juxtapose, the more beautiful the color is. There's more electromagnetic activity to the brain. So therefore, I'm juxtaposing either closest to you and or where I want you to look. Okay, we know this, right? Not a problem. Okay, and then as I go farther from you, it's moving away from me. I juxtapose, but I do a little overblending, and also juxtapose almost always with a bristle brush. Because if I use a sable, it puts too much paint down, so when I fan it at the end of the first day, it smears my color and destroys my color. So I have to watch how long the bristle brush is. It can't be too short and it can't be too long. So it's like the 3 yellow bears, it has to be just right. And so does the surface of the canvas have to have a little texture to it. So quite often we take any kind of acrylic linen or canvas and we put 75% liquid, Liquitex acrylic gesso clear, and we mix it 25% water to it. And we do a coat of that on it. And then farther away, I juxtapose, but I blur even more. And I juxtapose and I blur more. And this is not just for a lemon. This is also for a portrait and a landscape. Now, in fairness to him, you know, he was just doing a study, playing, and I just said, you know, but we can talk about this. Because do I think when he starts the real painting, he would be discerning and very careful about all these concepts? Yes. But I caught him at a moment when he was just blocking in, and I said, yeah, but my brain doesn't work that way. I don't turn it off. I've been using these sentences a while back when we were doing the spinners by Sargent. We first copied Valesquez, and we saw what he did, and that was incredible, and we have a series on that. And then when we started doing the Sargent copy of Valesquez, and I said, oh, I'll just block in the background and I'll sit down real careful and I'll paint it next week or tomorrow. I'll get the value and the color feeling and the temp right, and that's not an issue and I'll be done. And as I looked at Sargent's painting, I realized he didn't do that at all. Sargent washed in his background behind these ladies in the tapestry, and he put a little blue down, he put a little brown and a little blue, and every 1/4 inch was a different washed in color, correct value, correct intensity, and he did it once. He didn't say, I'm going to slow down and I'll do this correct later. I already know this concept. I don't need to worry about this. We were doing the 2 boats at Portofino that the class does. And in the middle of the 2 boats, I just said, okay, well, that's the concept. You understand it, class, we're done. And I didn't finish the 2nd boat. And when I was looking at Sargent's painting, helping someone the following week, all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, the boat that I didn't think was important and I left out, he was lighter and darker than the background every 1/4 inch. And I said, and I'll always remember this, Sargent, I didn't learn anything new about that concept. I knew that concept. We call it a figure-ground relationship. The object is lighter, then darker, and lighter and darker. And you don't have to rotate, it just can't be the same. In the Valesquez, we realized it has to be not just lighter and darker, but it had to be a different temperature, a different color. Every time you make a stroke, you make it lighter, it's a lighter brown, then maybe a darker blue, and then a medium blue, and then a lighter gray, and a lighter brown or blue, and then a darker brown. He made every stroke a different color, a different temperature, a different value, and different intensity. And I said, oh my gosh, I know this stuff. But Sargent holds me accountable. If I want my stuff to be accepted, okay, not like him, that's just an unrealistic dream. But if I want my stuff to be at a high level, he's saying, well, dude, okay, he might not have put it that way. He would have had a hint of a French accent or Italian, which you think. And he would have said, dudo, duo, thinko, you could try a little more, right? Because that's what happened. I checked out. I said it wasn't important. He said everything's important. And do you know why he said that? He said everything's important because if you put too many things that aren't important, we'll never know what's important. And his quote, that I'll paraphrase to be my own sentence and not a quote anymore, is Duran said to him, you leave something in the painting that's not important and it will destroy the painting. I think the actual quote was, if you leave something that's dispensable in the painting, it will be detrimental to the painting. You will lose your message. Oh, so maybe the drawing program is more important than I think it is, even though no one's going to convince me it isn't the most important thing you'll ever do in this program. Because every time you mark, it's not just make a mark, it's not just changing intensity and temperature. It's telling me where to look. How bright you make it, how gray you make it, that tells me my story.